The two blocks that hinder your soul. Revelations from St. Germain and Jeshua on humanity's total awakening. A journey of transformation for ancient souls, lightkeepers, healers, and sowers of consciousness. This is a spiritual guide to release the blocks of fear and mind, and to reconnect with the true source of your being. To understand the threshold you are crossing now, you must first remember the deeper purpose of your journey through this dimension. Because before you were this body, this story, this name, you were an eternal breath, a pure expanding consciousness. You had no form, yet you knew all. You had no limits, yet you longed to know them. And so, from the subtle planes, a sacred impulse emerged within you, to experience yourself in matter, to pass through the veils of forgetfulness to find, in density, what in the heavens was only potential. Earth is not a punishment. It is a temple of initiation. It is a cosmic school where the oldest souls choose to descend to attain a mastery that cannot be achieved on any other plane. The mastery of remembering light in the midst of darkness. Here, in this world where separation seems real, where pain seems eternal, where love seems scarce, here is where suns are forged. Here is where fire-bearers are born. Here is where eternal souls become alchemists. To incarnate on earth is to accept one of the most intense experiences in the universe, not only because of its physical density, but due to the emotional, mental, energetic, and spiritual intensity concentrated in this living sphere. Here, everything accelerates. Every thought has weight. Every emotion leaves a trace. Every choice can alter the timeline of entire generations. Earth, in its living wisdom, is not just a planet. It is a conscious being collaborating with your awakening. And within its field, the laws of karma, free will, and cause-effect operate with perfect precision. Nothing here is random. Everything has a hidden purpose, even your pain. From your first breath, you began a process of immersion into illusion. You inherited memories not only from your physical lineage, but from your multidimensional soul. You carried burdens you didn't understand, felt emotions that weren't entirely yours, and yet something inside you knew there was a deeper reason for being here. That silent wisdom is your soul speaking to you from the depths. Because even in the darkest shadow, the spark never dies. Even if you have lived many lifetimes sunk in unconsciousness, trapped in pain, in the struggle to survive, in attachment to what dies, every experience was sacred. The earthly duality, that oscillation between joy and sorrow, between expansion and contraction, between love and fear, was not a mistake. It was the method. Because it is in contrast that consciousness recognizes itself. It is in the fall that the will to ascend is born. It is at the limit that the soul remembers its infinitude. This planet has been the stage for cosmic battles, for ancient civilizations that rose and fell, for soul pacts signed beyond time. And you, brave soul, have witnessed it all. You have walked as priestess and exile, as sage and slave, as rebel, healer, persecutor and persecuted. You have tried every mask. Because only one who has been everything can finally be nothing, and from that nothingness, become everything. Today, in this life, you are at the threshold of the great return. You are beginning to see that darkness was never your enemy. It was your teacher. That pain was never punishment. It was a call. That wounds are not shameful. They are portals to true healing. What you see as fragments within you, traumas, fears, past mistakes, are pieces of a sacred puzzle now finally beginning to come together from the center. And that center is your soul, taking the helm once again. You have lived many lives without awakening. And that's okay. That was the plan. Because awakening too soon would have been counterproductive. The soul must ripen over time, like fruit that cannot be picked before it's ready. But now you are. Now the fruit is golden. Now the memory has begun to activate. And that's why you feel everything more intensely. That's why you can't go back. That's why you hurt over what you once ignored. That's why you ask questions you never dared to ask before. Because the light has begun to break through from within. Earth, your teacher, has also been your mirror. She has reflected your shadow, but also your immense potential. And now, in this very particular planetary cycle, she too is awakening. Gaia no longer upholds the old agreements. The planet's energy field is changing. And the souls who came to serve this change are being called, one by one, to remember their original pact. The outer world is in chaos because the collective field is being purified. Darkness has not intensified, it simply can no longer hide. Truth is emerging from the depths. And with it, the memories of your true lineage are also rising. You have been many things. You have had many names. But now is the time to release all forms, all masks, all roles, and return to the empty center where divinity breathes. The center where Saint Germain holds the transmuting fire, and where the solar consciousness of Jeshua opens the path back to unconditional heart. That union between transformation and love, between fire and compassion, between alchemy and redemption, is the axis of your initiation. Earth was the school. You, both student and master. Darkness was the classroom. Light, your inheritance. And now, the time of remembrance has begun. You did not come here to escape the world. You came to redeem it from within. And the only way to do so is to remember, fully and embodied, that you are the light you chose to forget so that you could awaken right in this moment. Earth as a school of darkness and light. Before all time, before the first star lit up the heavens, the soul already was. It had no name, no form, no knowledge of limits or pain. It vibrated in harmony with the source. In that primordial state, there was no fear, no judgment, no separation. Everything was pulsing unity, living intelligence, love and expansion. But the soul, in its purity, longed to know itself beyond ecstasy. It wanted to experience its divinity from within what did not appear divine. It wanted to illuminate the shadow to confirm its light was real. And so, the boldest decision of the cosmic journey was born. To incarnate on Earth. Earth is not just a planet. It is an alchemical crucible. An initiatory school where what is hidden surfaces, and where each step is an opportunity to remember what density tries to make you forget. Here, in this field of polarities, the soul submits to the laws of forgetfulness. And in doing so, it begins the path to mastery of embodied consciousness. In the higher realms, duality is just an idea. Here, it is a lived experience. On Earth, the soul learns through contrast. Light and shadow, loss and discovery, birth and death, desire and renunciation. This extreme experience is not a trap, but a sacred stage of evolution. You, who now hear or read these words, have incarnated here many times. You've tasted all flavors of karma. You have been light and darkness. You have loved and betrayed. You have carried the torch and tried to extinguish it. You have lived as victim and as oppressor, because only one who has walked the full circle can transcend it from the center. For centuries, you walked rugged paths. You lost yourself in the mazes of ego, in the illusions of power, in the mirages of desire. And yet, at the core of every experience, a spark remained lit. A secret memory, a knowing beyond words. Something inside you kept whispering, "This is not all. There is more. I come from somewhere else." And so, cycle after cycle, lifetime after lifetime, you began to remember. Not all at once. Sometimes in dreams. Sometimes in the void. Sometimes in the depths of pain. Because the soul does not awaken only in the heights of ecstasy, but especially in the depths of its darkest nights. That is the earthly paradox, that in the rawest moment, when you think all is lost, you are closest to the divine core. Jesus, in his human walk, knew this paradox. He was not born as an untouchable deity, but as an incarnated soul who chose to face every shadow through fidelity to love. He felt human pain. He felt rejection, temptation, abandonment. And still, he chose not to close off. He chose to keep loving. He lived with his feet on earth, but his soul connected to heaven. He did not come to found religions. He came to anchor a solar memory code, the possibility of living as embodied divinity in the midst of human chaos. Saint Germain, traveler of time and bearer of the transmuting flame, also walked the corridors of ego. He knew the thirst for power, the manipulation of the mind, the blindness of spiritual pride. But by facing his shadow, he found the path back to himself. He understood that true power does not lie in control, but in serving from inner freedom. From that moment, he became the keeper of the violet flame, the frequency that transmutes pain into wisdom and shadow into light. Both, from their different paths, arrived at the same point. The incarnated soul can remember its origin without escaping the world. You don't need to go into the desert or a temple to awaken. The temple is here. The body is the altar. Earth is the monastery. Life itself is the ritual. And that is why you are here. Because you chose this incarnation as the moment of return. This is the cycle where ancient pacts are reactivated. Not external pacts, but internal ones. The pact with your soul, your truth, your purpose beyond all masks. The darkness you have known was not your enemy, it was your mirror. It reflected what you had not yet integrated. Every wound taught you to heal. Every loss, to let go. Every mistake, to remember you are not the mistake. You are the consciousness that observes. You are the being that transcends. You are the star traveler who chose density not to suffer it, but to illuminate it from within. Today, in this life, you are no longer in the phase of forgetting. You have crossed many trials. You have awakened many memories. You are entering the stage of conscious integration. Now it is no longer about knowing who you are. It is about living it, embodying it, radiating it. You can no longer pretend ignorance. You can no longer wear borrowed bodies. You can no longer uphold truths that are not yours. Because your soul is crying out. And its song resonates with Earth's new vibratory field. Yes, Earth is changing, and so are you. The planet's energetic grid is rising, and with it, awakened souls are being repositioned internally. A deep reconfiguration is underway. Many relationships are dissolving. Many structures are collapsing. But it is not purposeless chaos. It is purification. A deep cleansing releasing collective consciousness from the weight of thousands of years of distortion. That's why you feel everything more strongly. That's why everything seems more intense. Because you are closer than ever to your true self. And what is not in coherence simply falls away. Not as punishment, but as a natural consequence of your awakening. The nature of fear, the first guardian of the threshold. In the higher planes of consciousness, where unity reigns and love unfolds as a universal principle, fear is simply a vibration that does not exist. There, the soul's essence moves without restriction, without doubt, without separation. But upon descending into the density of earth, that soul begins to experience an unfamiliar sensation, the forgetting of its origin. And in that forgetting, the first great veil is born. Fear. Fear is not just an emotion. It is an energetic field, a state of distorted consciousness that was seeded, fed, and sustained for thousands of years as a tool of collective manipulation. It did not originate in you. It was implanted, not out of malice, but as part of the contract of duality, so that the soul, by experiencing separation, might have the chance to recognize itself beyond it. From childhood, from your earliest incarnations, you were taught to fear punishment, lack, rejection, God, death, the other, and yourself. That fear became the cement of your decisions, the foundation of your conditioned personality. And so, unnoticed, fear began to shape your identity. But fear wears many masks. There are fears you easily recognize. Fear of abandonment, of failure, of loss, of death. But there are deeper, subtler, more paralyzing fears. The fear of your true freedom. The fear of being as great as your soul already knows you are. The fear of igniting a light that you can never again dim. Because deep down, you know that if you fully awaken, you can no longer pretend you don't know who you are. That is the oldest fear. The fear of your own greatness. The soul remembers. Though the mind may not understand, the energetic body retains every lived experience. It holds the echo of being marked, persecuted, exiled. It holds memories of being light in times of darkness, and paying the price for it. You were a shaman, oracle, healer, visionary, and also the victim of exile, mockery, fire, scorn. These memories awaken just as you are about to shine again. That's why, at the edge of awakening, panic arises. A part of you whispers, "What if they take everything away again? What if I lose my loved ones? What if I'm alone again?" That fear is legitimate. It has ancestral roots. But it is no longer real. Because the time has changed. Because you have changed. And because the world, though still trembling, is now ready to receive authentic souls who embody their light, without permission and without disguise. This fear is the first guardian of the threshold. It appears just before every great expansion. Not to stop you, but to ask. Are you willing to cross without certainties? Are you ready to step forward with no guarantees? Can you trust the invisible when the visible falls apart? When misunderstood, fear paralyzes. But when you observe it from the soul, you realize fear is just an unopened door, an illusion held by your former self. And behind that door, your true self awaits, naked, sovereign, free. This guardian is not defeated by fighting. It dissolves through love, by looking it in the eye, breathing in its presence without reacting. Every time you choose not to flee, not to numb, not to pretend, you are deactivating centuries of programming in your energy field. You are declaring, I no longer need fear to protect me. My truth protects me. My soul guides me. That is the great leap. You stop living to avoid danger and begin to live to embody your purpose. You stop seeking safety and start choosing inner coherence. You stop asking, what if? And begin affirming, this is who I am, and I choose it. You are not alone. You never were. The beings guiding you from higher realms have woven a web of light around the planet. A vibrational network composed of thousands of awakened souls like you. Souls who have also felt fear, but who crossed the threshold with open eyes and a burning heart. You are supported, not by your old patterns, but by the new that is emerging within you. You feel it in your chest. You hear it in your dreams. You sense it in your relationships. Something is changing, and that something is your consciousness, freeing itself from the pact with fear. This chapter does not seek to eliminate fear. It seeks to reveal its true face. Because when you recognize it as an old teacher, you can thank it. You can say, thank you for protecting me, but I no longer need you. I now choose to walk with the strength of my soul. Every time you choose courage, even if your body trembles. Every time you speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. Every time you move forward, even if your mind screams, stop. You are crossing the threshold. You are turning fear into living light. You are activating your authentic freedom. Because fear was the veil, but you are the door. And on the other side of that door awaits the life your soul came here to live. The fear of being great, the tragedy of the shrunken soul. And so, little by little, you learn to shrink your light, to adjust it, to dilute it, to cover it with layers of expected behavior. It wasn't a conscious betrayal. It was a desperate attempt to be loved. Because in this world, love seems conditional. And you, like every child, needed to belong. The soul, then, began to compress. It never stopped shining, but it started dimming itself. Your spontaneity was replaced by caution, your creativity by obedience, your intuition by imposed logic, your inner strength by masks of adaptation. And in that act, the soul was displaced. It became a silent witness, waiting for the moment when you would call it back. And now, that moment has arrived. The disguise you once chose to survive is beginning to fall apart. Not because it failed, but because its cycle is complete. The mask you wore, the character who pleased, who fit in, who didn't disturb, can no longer contain your inner fire. The energy of the soul wants to emerge. And as it does, everything false begins to crack. The soul can no longer be ignored. You can no longer deny your greatness. But here arises the second level of fear. The fear not only of failing, but of being as great as you truly are. Because if you were to accept your light, you could no longer stay hidden. You could no longer blame others. You could no longer wait for someone else to save or validate you. You would have to fully embody your power. And that is terrifying. Because true greatness is not arrogance. It is not superiority. It is not about dominating others or shining more than anyone. True greatness is silent radiance. It is the strength of being that asks for no permission. It is the coherence between what you feel, think, and do. It is radical transparency. It is walking soul naked through the rubble of a still sleeping world. And though that may sound glorious, it is also lonely, because it means breaking ties that no longer resonate. It means saying no where you used to say yes. It means disappointing those who expected you to keep fitting in. It means leaving behind the comfort of playing small. And that hurts. But it hurts even more to stay small. Your soul did not come to this life to repeat scripts. It did not come to play inherited roles. It did not come to obey collective inertia. Your soul incarnated to liberate entire lineages, to heal ancestral codes, to open new paths where walls once stood. And that mission cannot be fulfilled while you stay disguised. Behind the fear of being great, there is a deep calling. The calling to take your true place in the fabric of creation. Because every soul incarnated in this time holds a unique frequency, a key, a note in the planetary choir. If you refuse, that note is missing. If you shrink, the world loses an essential part of its song. You are unrepeatable. Your sensitivity, your passion, your way of loving, of seeing, of perceiving the invisible. It is not a coincidence. It is divine design. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are in transition toward your original form. And in that form, there is no room for a mask. Will you dare to be as great as you dreamed before you were born? Will you dare to speak from your heart, even if no one understands? Will you dare to hold your vision, even if the world around you trembles? You are not alone at this crossroads. The presences that walk with you, like the frequencies of Jeshua and Saint Germain, know this passage well. They lived it, each in their own way. They too doubted. They too were tempted to stay silent. They too felt the weight of being different. But they chose to be. And in doing so, they left a legacy that inspires you now. You are part of that spiritual lineage. It doesn't matter how many times you've failed. It doesn't matter how many times you've dimmed yourself. What matters is the choice you make now. And now, you are being invited to reclaim your original size. Not the size of ego, but the size of soul. The world does not need more perfection. It needs living souls. It needs embodied truth. It needs you to rise, not as a hero, but as a whole human being. And even if the mind says, you can't, the heart whispers, you always could. You were just waiting to remember. This is that moment. The mask falls. The light is revealed. And the greatness you once hid can finally begin to breathe. And so, you remain frozen, paralyzed between two worlds, the soul that knows and the mind that doubts. This is the second great obstacle of awakening, the most subtle, yet perhaps the hardest to transcend, because fear can be felt and transformed. But the disconnected mind can argue its prison as freedom. The rational mind is not the enemy. But when it operates alone, without heart, without soul, without connection to being, it becomes a mirror that only reflects what it already knows. And if you can only see what you already know, you'll never access what you truly came here to discover. This modern world has glorified the mind. It has enthroned it as a goddess. It has exalted it as the sole path to knowledge. But what we call knowledge in this world is often just accumulated information without soul. To know is not to understand. To understand is not to integrate. To integrate is not to embody. And the mind cannot make that journey without the soul guiding its steps. Intuition is a form of wisdom that cannot be explained with words. It is the voice of the soul. It is a certainty that needs no proof. It is an inner resonance that transcends logic. But to hear it, you must become silent. Not just external silence, but the silence of the thousands of thoughts you repeat every day. Silence not to escape life, but to open space for the deeper truth that doesn't shout. It speaks in subtle presences. The soul's voice doesn't push you, it invites. It doesn't demand, it seduces with love. And only when the mind quiets can that voice emerge. The mental labyrinth has exits, but they are not in extremes, not in answers, not in theories. They are found in the calm heart, in the present body, in the surrender to what cannot be controlled. The only way out of mental dominance is to disidentify from it. You are not your thoughts. You are not your beliefs. You are not your interpretation systems. You are the consciousness that observes those thoughts. And that consciousness is free, infinite, multidimensional. The soul doesn't need logic to speak to you. It speaks through synchronicities, through sensations, through art, dreams, nature, love, the body, silence. The frequency of Saint Germain holds the potential to liberate rigid mental patterns, not through rejection, but through vibrational transmutation. The violet flame he represents does not only transform fear, but also the mental circuits that sustain it. It is a fire that purifies the mind from excess control, to restore its original purity, to be the creative tool of the soul. The presence of Jeshua, from Christ consciousness, reminds us. Thought without love becomes sterile. Logic without compassion becomes judgment. Knowledge without humility becomes arrogance. The heart must reclaim its place as the axis of your perception. You are no longer called to renounce your mind, but to consecrate it to the highest in you. Give your mind a new role. Let it organize your visions. Let it design paths for what the soul reveals. Let it serve intuition, not replace it. Let it know how to discern, but also how to surrender. When you reach that alignment, when soul, mind, and body are in coherence, your life will cease to be a chain of forced decisions. and will begin to flow like a river guided by universal intelligence. This chapter is a key. Choose to open the door. Be silent. Listen. Don't think. Feel. What you've always known is waiting for you behind the noise. The rebirth of the inner fire, the womb gate. There are places in the body that are more than tissues and organs. They are sacred gates, thresholds where the soul can root and unfold. One of these places, perhaps the most forgotten and yet the most powerful, is the womb. It doesn't matter your gender, your age, or your story. In every human being, the womb is a living temple, a chalice, a fire waiting to be reignited. The womb is not just the physical center of biological creation. It is, in truth, the soul's womb, the energetic space where your most primal, purest, and most creative life force resides. There lives a fire that doesn't burn to destroy, but to manifest, a fire that doesn't scorch, but illuminates from within. That fire is the flame of your embodied purpose. And yet, in most people, that fire is extinguished, asleep, or reduced to barely visible embers. Why? Because from a very early age, you were taught to disconnect from that space. You were taught that the body is inert matter. That pleasure is suspicious. That desire is dangerous. That instinct must be repressed. And that creation is a privilege of the few. You turned away from your womb, and with it, from your embodied soul. In that act, the flame receded. It didn't disappear, but it remained trapped beneath layers of shame, fear, and rejection. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of desiring too much, fear of shining with a light that might not be accepted. And so, that sacred energy stayed locked away, waiting for you to reclaim it. This is the moment. The rebirth of the soul doesn't happen in the head, nor in ideas, nor in lofty spiritual concepts. It happens when the soul descends into the body, when it occupies it with love, when it inhabits it with presence, when it honors it as a temple. And the first place it must anchor is in the womb. There lives your original fire. There burns your deep truth. There rests the seed of your authentic expression. In this phase of your process, you are invited to bring your awareness down from the mind to the womb, to close your eyes, breathe deeply, and imagine a flame, not one imposed from outside, but one that has always been there, waiting for your return. That flame has a voice, a color, a name, a pulse. Do not try to define it with logic. Let it reveal itself. Perhaps it will appear as a longing you had forgotten, perhaps as an image, a symbol, an old emotion. Do not force it. Just listen. And when you feel it, ask it with sacred humility. What do you wish to express through me? What have I come to create with this fire? What energy longs to flow through me without censorship? Allow the answer to come not in words, but in vibrations, in sensations, in visions. That is your truth. And that truth does not need to be justified, only lived with integrity. Your inner fire is your true compass. It's not just artistic creativity. It is the primordial energy that fuels your path. It is the force that transforms vision into action, intention into reality, consciousness into form. Without that fire, you may have big ideas, but lifeless. You may dream much, but manifest nothing. You may long, but without movement. When the fire is awake, you become a living channel. Words flow. Decisions become clear. Doors open, not because everything is easy, but because you are connected to the sacred current that brought you here. Resistance dissolves. Indecision vanishes. The soul guides you from its ignited core. In ancient temples, fire was the center of every ritual. It was lit to invoke presence, to seal covenants, to initiate transitions. Today, in this new temple that is your body, the fire must burn again, not to repeat the old rites, but to inaugurate a new relationship with yourself. This fire is not a fire of destruction, but of creation. Not a fire of struggle, but of clarity. Not a fire of anger, but of the soul's burning coherence manifested. Visualize that fire now. Feel it. Invite it to expand. Give it permission to fill your womb, your chest, your throat, your gaze, your steps. Do not contain it. It is yours, and it's time to let it live. This fire is sacred. It is the power of your incarnated soul, and the moment has come for it to once again guide your days. The womb can no longer be denied. The soul longs to root itself in earth, and it needs your awakened fire. Walk now with that flame ignited. Because you are no longer here to contain yourself. You are here to create a life that burns in truth. The trap of the intellect, when truth is suffocated by concepts. Spiritual awakening is not an idea. It is a living, raw, embodied, sometimes heartbreaking, and always transforming experience. It does not happen in theory, but in the trembling of the soul as it begins to remember what it was never meant to forget. And yet, even on the path home, the mind finds ways to distract you. In ancient times, the traps were external: persecution, darkness, exile. Today, one of the most dangerous traps is subtler: conceptual spirituality. The overabundance of information, techniques, methods, theories, channelings, mystical knowledge, can become a golden cage if it is not embodied in flesh, in emotion, in daily decisions. These days, it's easy to appear awakened. It's easy to talk about chakras, timelines, dimensions, twin flames, Akashic records, solar activations. But all of that, if it doesn't touch your inner root, if it doesn't lead to embodied coherence, if it doesn't transform your relationships, your body, your honesty, your capacity to love, is just more mental entertainment. Not because it's false, but because it's not enough. True wisdom is not additive. It does not accumulate. It subtracts. It subtracts what you are not. It subtracts the noise. It subtracts the persona. Authentic wisdom does not feed the spiritual ego. It empties it. Saint Germain teaches that the violet flame of transmutation is not reserved for complex rituals. It activates in the simplest of moments, when you stop resisting what you feel and begin living your truth. without embellishment. The soul does not need to know everything. The soul needs to live itself without interference. Reading books, taking courses, attending ceremonies, channeling beings of light. All of that can be helpful. But if it doesn't pass through the body, if it doesn't become flesh, pulse, authentic choice, sacred relationship with yourself and the world, it's not integration. It is spiritual evasion wrapped in beautiful words. The higher mind can be an ally of the soul, but only if it kneels before the heart, only if it surrenders, only if it understands it is not here to lead, but to support the path that deep consciousness reveals moment by moment. Many get lost in the trap of seeking more answers, more certainties, more external validations. They cling to concepts as if they were anchors. But truth is not a concept. It is a frequency, a vibration that can only be recognized in the body. When you are aligned with what you truly are, information does not transform you. Embodied experience does. Sitting in silence, breathing deeply, feeling your body, observing your emotions without judgment, can do more for your awakening than 1,000 books. Honoring your shadow without denying it, forgiving yourself, letting go of the need to be right, speaking your truth without fear, being in presence with yourself. All of that is living wisdom. All of that is embodied spirituality. When the intellect takes over the spiritual path. When intellect takes control of the spiritual path, what was once a sacred process becomes a game of intellectuals disguised as mystics. It doesn't matter how much you know. What matters is how much you've embodied what you know. The mind can read about love, but only the heart can truly forgive. The mind can study compassion, but only embodied consciousness can hold another being without judgment. And that is the real leap. To stop consuming spirituality like products and begin breathing spirit into every act, every choice, every step. Truth doesn't need to be complex to be deep. Wisdom doesn't need words to be understood. It only needs space, silence, openness. You don't need to know more. You need to be more you. You need to come down into your body. You need to inhabit yourself. The soul does not come to debate. It comes to feel, to create, to express its purpose without masks. And that can't be achieved through theories, only through courage. This chapter is not a judgment against knowledge. It's a call not to get lost in it. Pause, breathe, feel, and ask yourself with honesty, am I living what I say I believe? Am I embodying the truth I preach? Am I using spirituality to expand or to hide? The trap of the intellect can only be deactivated by one force, the humility to return to the heart. There, everything aligns. There, everything simplifies. There, the true path back to the self begins. The shadow of normality, the spell of fitting in. Throughout the ages, humanity has built external structures to compensate for an inner loss. Institutions, ideologies, systems of behavior, social norms. And within that web, one of the most subtle and dangerous spells for the incarnated soul was woven. The belief that what is normal is what is right. From childhood, You were taught that the ideal is to fit in, not to stand out, not to cause trouble, not to go against the current. You were rewarded when you obeyed, when you adapted, when you fulfilled the expectations of adults, of school, of culture. And with each adaptation, a part of you was silenced. Thus, the persona was born. The self you built to survive in a world that does not always allow the truth of the soul. Little by little, you began to believe that being different was dangerous, that authenticity was inappropriate, that spontaneity needed to be corrected. And you did it without malice. You did it to belong. Because in this realm, the need for connection is as vital as oxygen. But that belonging came at a cost, your freedom. And not just any freedom, the most sacred of all, the freedom to be yourself without conditions. In the name of normal, many souls have renounced their purest gifts. They have studied careers that don't interest them, worked in systems that drain their vital energy, said yes when their entire being screamed no, stayed in soulless relationships for fear of loneliness, silenced visions, intuitions, truths, just to avoid judgment. And so, thousands of awakened souls live lives that aren't their own, camouflaged, adapted, shrunk. The shadow of normality is that voice that says, "Don't go too fast. Don't be so intense. Don't risk everything. Don't dream so big. Don't say what you really think. Don't show your weirdness. Don't shine so bright." But who decided what is normal? By what standard is it measured? What force has more right than your soul to tell you how to live? To be normal is often just a socially acceptable way of being asleep, a collective anesthesia, a routine disguised as safety. Yeshua confronts you not only with compassion, but with burning truth. How many pacts have you made with yourself just to avoid discomfort? How many times have you betrayed your soul out of fear of being alone? Because you know. Every time you stayed silent, something inside dimmed. Every time you pretended, something disconnected. Every time you acted from fear, another layer covered your light. But the soul cannot be forced into molds. The soul vibrates from uniqueness. Its language is difference. Its power is authenticity. Its compass is truth. That's why freedom is not achieved by fitting in, but by breaking out. It is not found by adapting to the old world, but by creating a new one from the center of your being. The new humanity will not be normal, not because it will be chaotic, but because it will be radically authentic. It will be wild in its tenderness, intuitive in its wisdom, brave in its vulnerability, loving in its honesty, sacred in its presence. It will not fear being seen. It will not ask for permission to exist. It will not need validation to vibrate. Are you willing to be that human? Are you ready to break the spell of normality and reclaim your original form? Are you prepared to disobey expectations and finally obey your soul? It's not easy. Breaking with what feels secure brings grief. It means losing status, acceptance, comfort. But what is lost is superficial. What is gained is real. You gain your sovereignty, your strength, your coherence, your joy, your peace. Not fitting in is uncomfortable at first, but then you discover that the free space where you no longer fit is where you can finally breathe. You are not here to seem. You are here to be, to embody the unique vibration you came to deliver. And if that makes you weird, if that makes you misunderstood, if that leaves you outside the mold, then you are on the right path. The shadow of normality dissolves when you choose to shine, even if no one applauds, when you decide to honor your soul, even if it's not approved, when you prefer to live your truth, even if it means walking alone for a while, because in that apparent solitude, you find yourself, and with yourself, the entire network of free souls awakening at the same time as you. Return to the sacred silence, the place where everything begins. You have walked far. You have faced shadows. You have named your fears. You have passed through the mind. You have ignited the fire. And now, the journey leads you to a place that cannot be conquered by effort or intellect. This is the moment to return to silence. Not a silence imposed by the outer world, but an inner silence that embraces everything, without the need to silence anything. A space without words where truth is not explained, but breathed. An invisible temple where the soul is not sought, but remembered. A sacred threshold where the noise of the world loses its power, and the melody of being begins to be heard once more. Sacred silence is not the absence of sound. It is pure presence without distractions. It is a vibratory state where you no longer need to understand with the mind, because you have begun to know with the soul. In that silence, there are no goals, no achievements, no unnecessary movement. Only pure presence. Only being. Only now. And yet, it is there, in the deepest part of that fertile emptiness, that everything begins. There, the vision awakens, not from your eyes, but from your center. There, guidance is perceived, not from external voices, but from the whisper of your soul. There occurs the fusion between your earthly identity and your eternal consciousness, not because you make it happen, but because you stop interfering with what has always been there. Silence is the original field. The beginning was not the word, but the void from which the word was born. It is there that creation arises, where seeds sprout, where consciousness blooms. And yet, few dare to remain long enough in that void, because we've been taught to fear non-doing, to run from boredom, to fill every space with something, as if space itself were a threat. But the soul needs space to unfold. It needs the mind to quiet. It needs the body to soften. It needs the heart to open, without expectations. Only then can true guidance emerge. Do not fear stillness. Do not fear non-doing. Do not fear that moment where nothing seems to happen, because it is there, right there, that everything is being rearranged from planes you cannot yet see. True wisdom does not enter with force. It arrives gently. It does not impose. It reveals itself. And for that to happen, you must empty yourself. Empty yourself of urgency, of imposed images, of accumulated concepts. of inherited expectations, of everything you think you are, but which no longer resonates with your soul. Saint Germain teaches that silence is the alchemical oven of the soul. There, the layers of ego melt. There, the impatient mind dissolves. There, fear is exposed, but also embraced and transmuted. In that sacred space, the two great obstacles begin to collapse, not by force, but by presence. Because in silence, there is no struggle, only recognition. Jeshua teaches that the highest guidance is not heard in the midst of noise, but in the sighs between thoughts. The voice of the soul does not shout. It does not argue. It does not debate. It is a constant murmur, an inner breath that can only be heard when everything else is quiet. And that calling is now. Take your time. Pause. Breathe. You don't need to do anything for a few moments. Just listen to what your soul has been trying to tell you all along. No urgency, no judgment, no rush. In that silence, you will recognize the frequency of the eternal, and you will realize that everything you were seeking out there was already vibrating within you, waiting to be heard. This is not an end. It is the threshold, the 0 point, the portal of return, because from silence, life is born again, and so are you. The final embodiment, living as a soul on earth. You did not come this far just to know a little more. You didn't walk through shadows, pierce the veils, listen to your soul, feel the fire, silence the mind, just to store this knowledge in a box. You came this far to embody, not to symbolize, not to theorize, not to appear, to embody. This is not an intellectual path. It is a cellular journey, an alchemy of the flesh, a transfiguration of the being. Everything you have remembered in these chapters now lives as an ignited seed within you. But the seed did not come to be admired. It came to bloom, and blooming hurts. Because blooming means breaking the old shape. It means being born from within. It means opening, even if the environment doesn't allow it, even if the climate doesn't favor it, even if others still choose to stay asleep. Embodiment is the soul's most courageous step, because it means to stop speaking about spirit and start living it in every choice, in every act, in every word. It means making love a posture, coherence a habit, truth a breath, the body an altar, and life a bridge between worlds. This is not a comfortable path. Yes, you may lose relationships. Yes, you may abandon old paths. Yes, you may be misunderstood, unseen, even rejected by those who cannot yet see beyond form. But what you receive in return cannot be bought or bargained. Your inner freedom, your spiritual sovereignty, your sacred joy, your incorruptible peace, your living guidance. You have been prepared for this over many lifetimes. And now the cycle completes, because the soul did not come merely to observe. It came to intervene in the real with embodied light. It is no longer time to hide. You can no longer pretend you don't know. You can no longer shrink your vibration to fit into dead structures. It's time to walk as one who has remembered everything. Saint Germain, guardian of the violet flame, anchors his message in this closing. Transmute your fear into courage, your mind into vision, your story into medicine. That is your role. That is your pact. Because it's not about erasing what was lived, but about turning it into spiritual gold. Everything that hurt, everything that broke, everything that was lost, can now become raw material for consciousness. And from the frequency of embodied love, Jeshua breathes upon your soul with tenderness and fire. You came to love in freedom, not to survive, not to repeat. You came to remember, and that memory is not in the heavens, nor in sacred books, nor on distant mountaintops. The memory is here and now, in your present body, in your awakened soul, in your will to be yourself, even as the world trembles. Because the new humanity does not need more teachers. It needs living testimonies, human beings who embody the soul without justification, souls who inspire not by their words, but by their vibration, beings who breathe their truth so deeply that simply by walking by, they awaken the sleeping memory in others. That is you. That is your offering. That is your place in the dance of collective awakening. And now, with everything remembered, with everything felt, with everything released, walk. Walk with your head high, with your womb ablaze, with your heart open, with your gaze clear, with your voice embodied, with your mind surrendered, with your soul in command. Walk as one who has crossed the threshold, as one who remembers their lineage of light, as one who no longer needs to ask permission to exist, because you are the living proof that the soul can inhabit the earth. You have awakened. You can no longer sleep. You have remembered. You can no longer forget. You have embodied. You can no longer go back. Now, live as the free soul you are, and let your very presence be the silent sign that heaven has already begun to manifest on earth.